So, hello everyone. Thank you for being here. And a special thanks to Grant as well and IGO Software for organizing this amazing event and for the opportunity to be here and be part of it. So my name is Andrea Cucciniello. I work at DataBene, which is a PostgreSQL service provider. It's a company that is deeply rooted in the open source ecosystem. And today, I'd like to share my perspective that blends both open source tools and my business operation view, and explain why open source tools like PostgreSQL and IvorySQL are not just technically solid, but they are a tool that makes long-term business sense. So, again, the motivation behind this talk is simple. I believe that organizations have the freedom to evolve. And many organizations still today are trapped in proprietary stacks. So each company, they have the right to choose, improve, and even change its mind if it makes business sense. But what happens is that especially this freedom of choice is given you by open source because you're not locked into a single vendor's pace or will. You are in charge when you use open source tool. Proprietary systems often force you into rigid patterns. They are harder to extend or integrate. Instead, tools like PostgreSQL and again IvorySQL, they're not just static technologies. They're part of large journey in which basically then aligns with your organization growth. Just a little bit about myself. So I don't have a technical background. I have a Master's of Business Administration. I basically came in touch with PostgreSQL in 2013 while I started working for Second Quadrant, which was, again, a PostgreSQL service provider, very well known in the community. The company does no longer exist. And since I came in touch with PostgreSQL World, I started to be involved in the community, and I organized, back then I was living in Australia, in Melbourne, and I organized the local meetup for PostgreSQL user group, and as well I co-founded the PGDU organization, which is the PostgreSQL Down Under, which the aim of the organization, it's grow the local community. And by the way, if you're planning to visit Australia this year, on the 17th of October, there's going to be the 4th PostgreSQL Down Under event in Sydney. I then moved into Europe, and currently I'm involved in organizing the Madrid and Barcelona meetup. So let's continue on to the path that I was explaining. Normally what we see 4 common pressure points, let's call it that way, challenges in each organization. You have, from one side, you have developers that are fighting the spaghetti code. This is often a result of years of legacy systems that have been layered over each other. And usually what developers want, they want cleaner architectures and modern tools. From the other side, you have your operation teams that is struggling managing dual environments. So there is old stack, which will still run some business critical systems, and then you have newer services that are built elsewhere. The sales team, usually it's hearing customer, then they demand for OpenStack and modern APIs. especially in SaaS and data-driven industry. And then you have the management as well, which is facing difficult trade-off because they can't block feature delivery of innovation just because the infrastructure isn't ready. And all these challenges, all these issues, they are not isolated. They collide, and they basically push many companies towards then open source solution like PostgreSQL. However, depends where you're coming from, the change is not easy because, of course, you need to face vendor lock-in effect. You can just migrate. There's integration, data formats, and skill set that are tied to a vendor. You might face the rising cost from license fee, which they normally grow year after year. And you have generally very limited control because you can't influence the roadmap. You wait and sort of hope that the features that you need, they're going to appear. This creates a ceiling for innovation, and open source helps you to remove that ceiling. So from a financial perspective as well, what these metrics show, again, it's a comparison between proprietary database versus open source. Again, if you are adopting a proprietary solution, you need to pay for a license, whether that's charged per core or feature. That's a different matter, but with PostgreSQL, for example, you don't face license cost. You have more flexibility, for example, with open source because you're free to deploy whatever makes sense to you, whether that's cloud, on-prem, hybrid, and you can do that without incurring in any penalty. You can tap into a larger pool of talent. There is a growing base of skilled professionals. And as well, the cost to scale, if you adopt an open source solution, that cost it's more predictable because normally there are not surprises fees for example, crossing your usage limit, your threshold. And so all this predictability, it's something that normally finance team really like. So again, coming from that finance perspective, why adopting open source tool like PostgreSQL makes sense? Of course, okay, there is the cost. You are lowering your total cost of ownership. We've seen yesterday as well in some other presentation that's probably one of the initial reasons why organizations think about moving to open source, but it's not the only reason. You have a modern infrastructure, cloud ready, works in containers, support continuous integration, continuous development, and has a strong extension systems as well. We saw yesterday how PostgreSQL extendability, it's one of the key advantage. And then it's transparent, so you can inspect the code base, you can tune behavior, and you can understand actually the performance because you're not dealing with a black box. And again, there is a broad ecosystem. You benefit from decades of testing from a very large and vibrant contributor base. So PostgreSQL really becomes a foundation and not a limiting factor. What we've seen that normally are principles that really guide a successful adoption. There is the mindset shift. And you have that mindset shift, when basically you start to see PostgreSQL just not as a database, but really as a strategic platform. You build tech stack that support business choices instead of one detected by vendor contracts. Again, using an open source tool allows you to do that. You have that strategic freedom. And the continuous evolution, it refers to the fact that once you adopted that mindset shift, the open source mindset, and you have this strategic freedom as well, you get to use just not to get things done, but you also keep learning and you want to improve, and always you can do that. Because again, in an open source, you can start contributed, you can start to as well build, for example, your old extension and contribute to the R&D to build the extension that you need or the feature that you need. And so in all, again, open source is not just cost-cutting exercise, but a long-term investment in agility. And this is what we've seen, again, over, let's say, decades of conversation with customer or meeting, people at conferences, is that usually there is a path. Again, this depends, meaning that if you are a startup nowadays, then it's just adopt an OpenStack directly. You won't go through exactly all these different phases, but if you are, again, a company then started up, 20 years ago, adopting, again, closed source proprietary, this is usually what we see in the transition. There is normally an adoption phase initially, in which company bringing Postgres maybe into a small project. There is a cautious rollout because people inside the company normally they are not sure that Postgres can do what they need. And they begin to experiment, and that, let's say, experience needs to build confidence. And then you have a second phase in which is the discovery phase, where basically PostgreSQL has become the default for new projects, and your internal skill grow. And then you arrive into the phase 3 in which you basically, your company starts as well to contribute back, to influence the ecosystem and to mentors others. So again, why I'm mentioning transition to Postgres, to open source, and not migration to Postgres. The word migration sounds temporary. It's like when you migrate to another region because you have a job opportunity, and then, after a few years, you can always migrate back. You have, with this word, you have the sense that, you can go back and forth anytime. Transition has a deeper meaning. It's a more strategic shift. One that reflects, a new architecture, a new team structure, and the new mindset that I mentioned before. And as well, knowing that you are doing a transition and not just a migration, and then it's not just a rip and replace exercise. It helps, I think, as well, to have everybody on board into the organization. Phase 1 adoption, again, from 0 to 2 years. This is just an indication. Depending on the company, this phase can last 6 months, 18 months. It's just, again, based on what we've seen. And normally, you have 1 or 2 internal champions in the company, maybe from developers or operation staff. They are pushing for PostgreSQL adoption, and they might face internal resistance to questions like, what about support? Developers might be worried about compatibility. There's still some people that think that PostgreSQL might be an unproven solution, even if it has decades of history. And this is a place where a tool like IvorySQL come in place and really helps bridge this gap, especially for Oracle environment, because it gives teams the feeling of continuity. Adoption is a delicate phase, again, because if things break or slow down, and you risk to lose momentum. And as well, this is a phase in which if you have guidance from a PostgreSQL service provider, it's very helpful. So IvorySQL, the bridge from Oracle, as I was mentioning, IvorySQL, it's a tool that we use to help, especially in this early stage, in this adoption stage, because it provides significant Oracle syntax compatibility, and so that helps developers transition to Postgres with minimal changes to their existing workflow. And so this means that they don't need to learn everything again from scratch. And so they can keep working whilst the backend changes. So it makes the switch much more easier. This is just an example of typical transition using IvorySQL. Again, this is based from our experience. And this normally, an initial audit assessment, and then we run proof of concept, training the team, providing support, and then into getting the full adoption. As I mentioned before, this could last 6 months, 18 months. Usually it's up to 2 years. Then you have a second phase, which is the discovery. And in this phase, well, PostgreSQL has become your default choice. The team have learned how to operate and troubleshoot it. You might have still some old legacy systems that are being replaced or migrated, but your, developers team now is familiar with SQL and PostgreSQL extensions. The business saw the value of having, being independent from vendor, saving costs, and then as well having faster delivery cycles. Again, scaling might have still some, growing pains, but it's also like where basically company like us, other service, PostgreSQL service provider can help company during this phase. And then finally, you arrived into the last phase, is the contribution phase. Basically, here it's where you have internal advanced knowledge. You have you're building internal training programs. You are influencing the roadmap of the tools that you use because you're contributing actively into the community. And this is where exactly the return of investment of the tools is realized at 100%. You can clearly see that when you're there, it's not a cost-saving exercise anymore, but it's an exercise that you gain independence and resilience. So how service provider like us can help. Again, there are like organizations like us in the PostgreSQL ecosystem that help you break and fix, answering technical questions, and providing guidance to team. And so that in order that eventually the goal of all the companies that are in this ecosystem is to basically provide other companies with the tool and with the knowledge that eventually that they're gonna become self-sufficient over time. Long-term advantages. So you will have more control over your system, lower long-term cost. You have adopted tools that actually match how your team actually want to work, less in the dependency on vendors, and most of all, the freedom to improve without asking for permission. Closing. Open source is not just a one-time decision. It's a process. It's something that gives you control. Tool like IvorySQL, it's a great on-ramp when dealing with Oracle systems. The goal is not migrate, but transition to something then it lasts, then it's sustainable, then it's open. And so all in all, PostgreSQL and IvorySQL give you a path to better control, more flexibility, and a stronger future. So the final message is that technology should serve the business, not a vendor. And each organization should be free to evolve at their own pace and using the tool that actually serve the way they work. So thank you so much for your attention. In case you want to connect with us, Data Bene, I'll leave you the
okay, thank you, Andrew.
details.